Arkansas and Texas, a rivalry for over a century, with the 80th matchup coming this November. From the game of the century to Texas joining the SEC, get ready for a special edition of the Big Trail. This is Hogs versus Horns.
A rivalry almost as old as college football itself. The Hogs and Horns have a long history that goes back to the days of John C. Futrell and R.D. Wentworth.
Well, Texas just beat the snot out of Arkansas, so they go 2-1 in the first year and lose to Texas. They didn't play again until 1903, and then it was sporadic. Again, Texas won the first 11 games, and Arkansas scored 6 points. Arkansas's first win was 1933. Arkansas beat Texas in 1935, 36, 37, and 38. But then Texas came back and was the dominant team again.
Yeah, Texas was just an elite program. They beat a lot of people. Anybody that plays Texas a lot, they're not going to have a winning record against Texas. They really were everybody's rival, Texas Tech, Arkansas. But without question, in those Southwest Conference days, Texas and Arkansas, that was a big deal. It really started becoming a big deal in the 50s and 60s.
From 1939 to 1953, the Horns went 14-1 and had a stronghold on the Southwest Conference. It wasn't until the mid-1950s that the Hogs made up some ground. At the same time, a young Frank Broyles was starting his ascent up the coaching ladder.
He got into Georgia Tech and played for Bobby Dodd. He was an elite mind.
He was very public relations minded and very family oriented. He had 6 kids. And a very compassionate man, and he loved the state of Arkansas. He wanted to come to a state where one school dominated, and so he wanted the Arkansas job.
Well, he was a great coach, and he was very consistent, in what his approach was, who he hired, how he did things, and it's just that success that he had and the consistency and the belief probably more than anything, and he had in what he was doing, and obviously the players and the state believed it as well.
Well, I knew him as a football coach. I'm from Missouri, and I went to the University of Missouri, and of course he was known up in Columbia as the guy that came in and coached for 1 year and then bolted to Arkansas. I'd bring that up to him from time to time, and he'd always say, "I did not bolt as a coach. You were there 1 year. I think you bolted."
The Arkansas job opened after the '57 season, and he was brought here as head coach and obviously had the greatest career of any coach that's ever been here.
With a change coming in Fayetteville from Jack Mitchell to Frank Broyles, Darrell Royal had already taken the reins of a Texas team that went 1-9 in 1956. By the time Broyles stepped foot at Razorback Stadium, Texas was back on top of the Southwest Conference.
He had these coaches, and you could tell he had his hands on them. Because when he said something, everybody popped up and listened. It wasn't no BS about it. But I learned from him, how to start mixing with all kind of people like he was with Coach Broyles.
To get Arkansas back on the map, Broyles had to go find players where no Hog coach dared to go before.
He really recruited Texas well. You look at Lloyd Phillips, Outland Trophy winner for Arkansas. He was from Longview, Texas. You look at Bill Montgomery, great quarterback on their 60s teams. He was from Texas.
He had amazing charisma, and he hired great assistant coaches. So he went to the radio stations, and he told them he wanted them to just carry Razorback football. Before then, that wasn't the case. East Arkansas, they might be carrying Ole Miss, or they might be carrying LSU. And so he built this humongous network, so there was no exclusivity. Everybody's carrying the games. So when kids were growing up, it was all Razorbacks. He came into a very poor state with, quite frankly, poor self-esteem, and gave Arkansans something to really be proud of.
That change didn't happen overnight. In 1958, Broyles' first year on the Hill, the Hogs finished with a losing season. In the meantime, Darrell Royer went 7-3 in his second season, culminating in a win over Broyles' Razorbacks in Fayetteville, 24-6. However, the two coaches were building something unique on and off the field.
Each other back in 1894. They've decided national championships on the field against each other, forever linked by the coaches Royal and Broyles.
I think they just had a lot of mutual respect, and they loved golf, and they liked to spend time together, and the key was they didn't talk football.
They was very good friends, and I even learned a lot from them. You can compete against one another, but you can be friends. And believe me, when Frank Broyles showed up around Darrell Royer, I would see a different smile. They really loved each other as grown men, and they were both pretty successful.
It was the relationships between, Arkansas people and Texas people like that was unique that doesn't exist anymore anywhere in college sport. It was pure hatred among fans. You know, they saw Texas arrogance among their fans and were not treated right. Texas won most of the time. We celebrate those victories because of the way those fans treated us through the years.
The turn of the decade from the 50s to the 60s ushered in the golden age of Arkansas football. The Hogs won the conference in 1959, 1960, and 61, giving Broyles his first career win over Royal and the Horns in 1960.
Now that was really the turning point. They beat Texas 24-23 at Austin. The game was nationally televised. He had the support of the entire state of Arkansas. He did what nobody had done before.
I mean, every time they played, it was a monster game.
None bigger at the time than the 1964 game. Arkansas was undefeated and looking to beat Texas after losing 6 of the previous 7 to them.
You hear people talk about the greatest Arkansas victory, but to me, you have to start. Number 1, Texas was in the middle of a dynasty. Arkansas went to Austin.
They've been deciding Southwest Conference championships for the past 6 years. Ernie Coy ranks with the best, and he booms a 47-yard spiral to Hatfield at the Arkansas 19. Some fancy footing, and he heads for the corridor. The Razorback bench gets a front row seat on the biggest play of the year as Hatfield races 81 yards into the end zone for a stunning touchdown. Texas goes for the win. The Hogs defense the pass play with Green at tailback and Rush Christianek. It's no good, and Arkansas has ended a 15-game winning streak to reign as the new king of football in the Southwest Conference.
If you look at that 64, 65, 66 era when Arkansas was so good, loaded with Texas players because they came knowing that they could compete and beat Texas.
Following the 64 national championship, the Hogs beat Texas again the next 2 seasons. After Texas won in 67 and 68, the 1969 game was set up to be the game of the century.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the game of the year. The 44,000 are here as the nation's #1 team, the Longhorns from the University of Texas, are ready to defend their lofty ranking against the #2 team in the nation, the Razorbacks of Arkansas.
They usually played in October.
So here you are playing on December 6th. There's no other game going on, and here's Arkansas and Texas.
It was a great day for the state because the focus of the nation was here.
There is President Richard Nixon arriving on the scene.
As a football fan, he decided, hey, there's the #1 and 2 teams from the country playing. It's December. There's nothing else going on. Let's go. As he's coming in, Arkansas is on they're driving for a touchdown.
Montgomery. Was he inbound? Yes, he was.
Bill Burnett's leaping over the line to score a touchdown as Nixon comes in. Fans are going crazy. He thought it was for him. It was a big deal to have him there.
Montgomery. Touchdown! 29 yards.
Arkansas was up 14-0, and Texas made the big comeback, and your James Street had a big run, and Arkansas fans will tell you that the Razorback, who was in position to make a tackle, got clipped, didn't get called.
There he goes! And Texas is on the scoreboard.
And you got to give Darrell Royal credit. He went for 2.
And Street. What a heads-up play.
And then Arkansas got in field goal range, and Bill Montgomery, who was a great quarterback, threw an interception.
Texas eventually drove down, scored the touchdown, won it 15-14.
There it is. Jubilant Longhorns.
It changed the fortunes. Arkansas, it dipped a little bit after that. The football program did. I think there was a sense of mourning among the coaches' staff. It was a tough day for the program.
It might have united the people of Arkansas more than any of the wins. It's amazing, I think, how Arkansas people were drawn together, which is why I think they talk more about that game than the wins in 64 and 65.
Despite the loss, the impact of Broyles' teams in the 1960s would go far beyond the field with Dixie's last stand.
That was the last game played with all white players, Arkansas and Texas.
Well, it's hard to believe, but you watch film of that game or you look at team pictures, both teams were totally white.
1968 marked the end of the civil rights movement, and the state of Arkansas was once at the forefront. In 1954, the Little Rock Nine forced President Eisenhower to force federal troops to escort African American students to and from classes at Central High School. For the new coach on the Hill, there was no question how he wanted to run his program.
When Coach Broyles came to Arkansas, he wanted to integrate immediately his football program. He did at Missouri. He signed the first black football players that ever played at the University of Missouri. Now that was his recruiting class that they never played for him. In 1969, Arkansas brought its first black player in, John Richardson. He was a freshman. He was the only scholarship black player on the team. At that point, Alabama, Ole Miss, those schools had not integrated yet. That group that came in '73 was the group that launched integration in a big way at Arkansas.
Integration became normalized in the 70s. From Richardson and Arvis Harper to Vernon Hune and Melanie Davis, Razorback history has been full of great African American athletes. However, none of them would have had a chance if it weren't for Darrell Brown.
He grew up in a very small town to a father who was a janitor, a mother who was a teacher. He's always had a want to push. His brothers and his sisters all excelled. He had a drive. He decided he wanted to do something, and he went to Fayetteville, and reading up on what he did and what he had to go through, for me, is kind of the bigger thing. How could you go through all that? Why'd you last as long as you did? You wouldn't have had all these races in there if you didn't have somebody who came in and took a whole bunch of and to be honest with you, the brunt of the punishment.
While Brown never played it down for the Razorbacks, he was on the Schultz squad. Brown and the other Schultz would practice against the varsity during fourth quarter. With all of the racism and adversity he faced, it was the friends Brown made on the team and David Hargis, Bruce Maxwell, and Terry Don Phillips that helped him fight through it.
The fact that he went there, that to me is the biggest fight that he had, was going there and then dealing with it for years afterwards, where he was not even really, he wasn't acknowledged by anybody. For us, it was already done. He had already dealt with it, but he also would tell us about the positives of the guys that he met, David. And then, like I said, just longtime friends up until his death, they were great friends. There's issues, but there's also something that we can bring us together with.
In 2011, Brown finally got the recognition he deserved.
For the family, it was a big deal, 2011, to get up there and to have them recognize him and to see him smile, see him with an actual jersey. He's excited. You persevere through things and you don't let anything stop you, and that's pretty much what he's taught us. You just keep going regardless of what's in front of you.
Today, Darrell Brown Jr. can look around and feel comfortable knowing where Arkansas has been and where it's going.
It goes a lot further than just the field. You've got now, not only do you have players, but you have people who are now in college who weren't going to U of A in the numbers that they are now. He's got big shoes, and we just kind of put our feet in them and hope we can walk in the shoes.
With integration the new normal on the field for the Razorbacks, change was coming quickly off the field as the fate of the Arkansas-Texas rivalry would be forever changed.
Coach Broyles is looking at the SEC and thinking, is anybody ever going to expand?
The rivalry never left the state, even though we weren't playing.
The 1970s and 80s saw the rivalry shift back to Texas. The Hogs won only 4 times, highlighted by a blowout win in 1981 over then #1 Texas.
Running back Gary Anderson was the grateful beneficiary, enjoying one of the most productive games of his career. The Hogs won big, 42-11.
While Texas and Arkansas remained strong, the old Southwest Conference was unstable. Frank Broyles, who was now Arkansas's athletic director, began looking for a way forward for the program outside the Southwest Conference.
The Southwest Conference was a sinking ship, and then this big, beautiful ocean liner, the SEC, it was coming by and through Arkansas, a life preserver.
The move to the SEC was probably the most visionary thing that he did in his entire time at the University of Arkansas.
Just like that, the old Southwest Conference rivalry was over and a new era of college football began.
Splash Saturday in Dallas, Texas, where a sellout crowd is ready for the renewal of one of the great rivalries in college football.
Arkansas, after they joined the Southeastern Conference, ends up playing Texas in the Cotton Bowl January 1st of 2000. There's no fear. There's no intimidation factor whatsoever. Playing Texas wasn't any big deal.
This will be Arkansas's first bowl win since 1985, a victory at the Holiday Bowl over Arizona State.
Houston not doing the downward hook 'em horn sign on the sidelines late in the game. And then he smiled because the fans were doing it. Houston was enjoying it, totally understandable.
Houston Nutt raised in triumph. The Arkansas Razorbacks' first Cotton Bowl win since 1976.
Following the Cotton Bowl, the series would go 1-2 in favor of the Horns from 2003 to 2008. After that, another bowl game showdown in the 2014 Texas Bowl in Houston, and yet another Horns down controversy.
Well, I don't know. I never asked Coach Bielema about it. It was in the press conference, and it wouldn't surprise me if he did it, but he said he didn't. I don't think Coach cared. I think he thought we had a better team and we were going to go out there and win.
Off the play fake, wants to throw deep down the middle of the field, in the end zone, fight for the football, touchdown Arkansas! Demetrius Wilson, 36 yards.
Probably couldn't have played a whole lot better that day than what we did.
Allen gives it to J. Will Williams at the goal line. Did he get in? No signal yet. Now they do. Touchdown, Arkansas. The Razorbacks have won the Texas Bowl.
2021, the first time the Horns came to Fayetteville since 2004. Had the same fate for the Hogs as 2014.
What's interesting to me is how the younger people understood it. I don't know if they were getting history lessons before that 2021 game, but how many students were walking around doing that?
And they go underneath to Johnson. Johnson fighting for the goal line and finding it.
So we're going in there, we had a lot of confidence, I remember.
Arkansas dominated both lines of scrimmages. That never happened in the Southwest Conference. Arkansas might win, but they weren't going to dominate the line of scrimmage.
3rd and 2. A.J. Green. They are plowing.
Just beat the stuffings out of Texas at Fayetteville, which was absolutely great.
Coach Odom had a brilliant defensive game plan, and I said they can't score. We just got to hold on. We got to hold on to the ball, and our offensive line and running backs took over the game.
It's a good, solid win for Arkansas. The beautiful win.
It was a big deal. They stormed the field after Arkansas won the game. I mean, it wasn't beating LSU or Alabama, an SEC game. They beat Texas, and fans are stormed. So I think they've got a pretty good idea that it's a rivalry game. Beating Texas is going to be a lot tougher than it was in 2021.
When they first got announced as being an SEC team, they really weren't ready for the SEC. Now I think they are.
"16 is our today, and 16 is our tomorrow."
I jokingly say this, and I feel like when you go to Arkansas, that I almost at times feel like they hate Texas more than they like themselves.
Texas and Oklahoma's move to the SEC was like an earthquake that shook the landscape of college athletics in 2021. Flash forward to this 2024, regionality in college athletics is far gone. Except in the SEC, where the Longhorns' move allowed Texas to add 2 more rivalry games in Texas A&M and Arkansas.
The fact that we get to play Arkansas again is awesome. I mean, how many teams in the country get to play 3 rivalry games in the regular season? It's one of the beauties of being in the Southeastern Conference.
We want to be ready every time we have an opportunity to run out there and play the Longhorns.
It's a big deal to Arkansas, I think. Certainly if you're of a certain generation, if you're an older Arkansas fan, you remember what, those Texas, Arkansas, Southwest Conference games are like, and of course the games played since then. Certainly for Arkansas, Texas now will be the #1 rivalry, in my opinion.
The passion and intensity presets the expectation for special nights with these rivalries.
While most players on the 2024 roster for both the Horns and Hogs have not played in the series yet, they all know what's at stake when the two hit the field on November 16th.
It's definitely going to be cool to rekindle that rich traditional rivalry for sure. It's going to be good for both universities to finally get back to that, because I think it was like the 50s and the 60s they were just going back and forth. So
I'm very excited. Talking to some not former players, but players on the team who were here for that last Arkansas-Texas game, they were like, man, that environment was something else.
Everybody talks about the game when they came here, and they rushed the field and all that. So just the passion that both fan bases have, that's one of the reasons why I came to Arkansas. just the passion, just when Arkansas football's on, everybody in the state's watching.
It's one thing to hear about the fire between the two programs. It's another to see it in person.
I think you're just going to have to go to it and see it, and people have, and they've kind of gotten caught up with it once they see it.
When we talk about Arkansas, Texas, we have to remember it's not just football, it's all the other sports. They were the measuring stick. You know, some of my all-time great memories are victories over Texas. Every time we play them, it's a chance for magic.
Unfortunately, right now for Arkansas, Texas' program is in a lot better shape than Arkansas's and much more prepared to go in the SEC now than they would have been a few years ago. But even with all that, I think fans will still probably want to beat Texas more than anybody else.
You know, there's certain rivals that just supposed to be. You know, I see like the Arkansas, Texas, because of two people, Frank Broyles and Darryl Royer, started that. Great, I think Darryl Royer and Coach Broyles are up there smiling saying, look what we did.